life. It's really okay. And now it's official. Now we're really recording. So I'll welcome everyone again. Thank you so much for joining. It's great to see you all hopping on here in Zoom land on this beautiful summer evening. If you would like to put your name and where you're Zooming in from, if you're a homeowner or renter, if you want to share that in the chat, that would be, fun information to have, but, no pressure. Really glad you're here to learn from our clean energy coaches. And I just want to, thank everybody for taking this time, especially on behalf of the three sponsoring organizations, New Yorkers for Clean Power, Bedford 2030, and Sustainable Hudson Valley. So thanks everyone for being here. We are going to get started. Since we only have 1 hour, we want to be respectful of everyone's time, and it's a weeknight. So we will get going with the coaches introducing themselves. I guess just first and foremost, if you didn't have a chance to read the fine print about what the clean energy coaching program is, you can basically sign up for a 45-minute, up to 45-minute, one-on-one with any of our clean energy coaches who are really experts in implementing clean energy solutions into your life as a renter, as a homeowner, so you can decarbonize your life, your home, and take important steps to reduce your own carbon footprint and greenhouse gas emissions, and hopefully live a cleaner, more comfortable, healthier life that is also better for the planet. And our movement to transition off of fossil fuels helps to grow that house by house, person by person, building this movement. And the clean energy coaches are a really important part of that. And they can hold your hand through this process, which I think all of us can appreciate a little bit of help navigating what is sometimes a little complex, figuring out all of the ins and outs with energy efficiency, solar, EVs, induction stoves, heat pumps. There's so much that they're expert in that they can help you with. So without further ado, I want to welcome Tom Konrad, Samrat, Pathania, and Bob Fischman. It is such a delight to have you guys here and really appreciate all of your good work. If you want to just Tom, if you want to kick it off and just introduce yourself. Oh, and I should say, we're going to be going over a few frequently asked questions after the guys introduce themselves that we always get about clean energy coaching, and then we'll open it up to the audience if you want to raise your hand and ask a question, or if in the meantime you want to put a question in the chat. We can do it that way too. And as always, with our online teach-ins, we capture questions that we don't get to, and we make sure to get those questions answered and follow up with you after. And of course, we'll have a recording and all of the great links that Amelia is going to be putting in the chat as we go along. So yeah, just some housekeeping to put your questions in the chat or save them till the end. Okay, so Tom, do you want to start off and just say a little bit about yourself before we dive into the FAQs?
Yeah, great. Thanks, Betta. So I've been a coach for maybe a year and a half for New Yorkers for Clean Power. It grew out of my work as the chair of the Marbletown Environmental Commission, where I was working with a group on helping businesses clean up, and just found that we were doing a lot of that. In my job, I am a investment analyst and hedge fund manager specializing in clean energy stocks. So I've been sort of involved in clean energy in all aspects of my life, probably for almost 20 years now.
We are so lucky to have you, Tom, and everybody who signs up with Tom will be thankful because you will learn so much. You're truly a wealth of information, as is Samrat, our other clean energy coach from NYCP. Samrat, do you want to introduce yourself?
Sure. So I'm Samrat. I am a public school teacher. I teach mathematics, physics, and computer science in Wallkill High School. And I do a lot of this in my classes as well, where I talk to my students about how do we transition to a fossil fuel free future And I'm very passionate about electric cars, and that's why Tom asked me to join the team. So he said, you kind of talk to people about electric cars all the time. Why don't you become a coach? And that's one of the things that I really, really enjoy doing. So I'm grateful that I have this opportunity to be part of this team and to be on this forum tonight.
Thanks, Samrat. And you really got me super excited to get an EV long before I had one. So I can attest to your enthusiasm for EVs and your expertise. And both of these guys are available no matter where you live in New York State. They can help you. So you can, sign up, get an appointment for a one-on-one with either Tom or Samrat. And then if you live in Bedford or a little beyond Bedford, in the greater Bedford area down in Westchester, you can sign up with Bob Fischman, who we are very fortunate to have here also talking about Bedford 2030's great program that Bob offers. Bob, do you want to introduce yourself?
Sure. Thanks, Betta. I appreciate the intro. So I've been doing energy coaching here for just the better part of the last year, and we certainly took a lot of lessons from Tom and Samrat's efforts elsewhere in the state. My background, I've long been an advocate for sustainable building and facility management, emphasizing energy efficiency and eliminating wasted energy in homes and businesses and industry. Like Tom, I have spent quite a few years working in clean energy finance with the Energized New York PACE Finance Program as managing director and compliance director. And before that, I spent a very long career in the building industry, managing all sorts of development projects from single-family homes to high-rise office and apartment buildings to colleges, universities, and K through 12 schools. And in our community here, I serve as on our town's sustainability committee, and I've worked on the Westchester County Global Warming Task Force and things like that. So this has been a real passion for me, and looking forward to the session this evening.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Bob. And I think we're all really passionate about clean energy solutions, which is why we're here, and really appreciate everybody joining us. So as I said, we're going to start with some frequently asked questions. And the first one that we often get is, do you sell anything or get a commission by offering me these services? What stake do you have in renewable energy alternatives? And I think that is a fair question. And maybe people are wondering, if I sign up for solar, is like Tom getting some kind of a, bonus for this? The answer is no. The coaches all do receive, compensation for their time, but not for selling a particular service or signing anybody up for, a particular product. So that's just good information to have. I don't know if anybody, Samrat or anyone wanted to chime in, additionally about, kind of what motivates you to do this, but just wanted to kind of get that out of the way because it is a question we always get. And all of our organizations are nonprofits. And I can say NYCP gets, money from donors and from foundations. And then we use that to, compensate these guys, which I should say is really more of a stipend, because they really, are worth a lot more. And basically doing this, I would say, is a little bit more than volunteers. So appreciate all of your expertise, guys. And everybody's so lucky to have this as a free service. But please, Samrat, if there was anything else you wanted to add in particular, I had a note that you might.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, because I just wanted to say, because people always ask me, why do you do this? What's in this for you, right? And I think the fact that we all are here, we know why we are here. And there's a larger civilizational level problem that we have, but on a very personal level, I do this because I have a 16-year-old daughter who has her whole life ahead of her, right? So to me, there's no amount of money that you could give me to not do this, right? That's the way I look at this, that I have to do this. This is my duty towards my daughter, towards my students, and towards my community. And we live in such a beautiful part of the country here in the Mid-Hudson Valley. So to me, it's almost a privilege that we get to do this.
Very well said, Samrat. And I feel the same way. It is a privilege to get to work in the clean energy climate space. And I think many of us are doing it for future generations. So thank you for sharing that. So one big question that we often get with clean energy coaching is, I don't own a home, what can I get out of clean energy coaching? And beginning when I invited everybody to, put in the chat where you're zooming in from, if you are a renter, homeowner, that was information that we wanted to have because both homeowners and renters can benefit from clean energy coaching in a variety of ways. But I'll let Bob, if you want to chime in, and Samrat, and of course, Tom too, but why don't we go in that order?
Okay, sure. Thanks, Beta. So first off, if you're a renter, you're getting free and impartial advice on ways to reduce your energy bills. Also because, if you're a renter, the landlord owns and maintains the heating and in some cases, that cooling equipment. And at some point that landlord is going to need to replace that equipment, and you can make a good case to your landlord to upgrade now. There's higher resale value, lower maintenance, and you might even propose shared savings as a value proposition that's important to the landlord. I just want to add, also very recently I've heard from realtors who have reached out to me on behalf of customers who are looking to purchase homes. So if you're currently a renter, but you're looking to purchase a home, working with an energy coach can help you learn some things that that you might want to look for when you're looking at a home, because some of the things that you learn will be different from the sort of things that might show up on a typical home inspection report.
If I may add to that, as a renter myself, right? I've been renting all my life. I sort of prefer that. And this aspect that you're talking about, Bob, that of convincing the landlord to change. I mean, this is really powerful because my landlord, who I'm very close with, he's bought electric cars. He's put heat pumps. Here's a heat pump right above me. You can see that this was just put 2 months ago. So they've bought electric cars. They've put charging stations outside, as in outlets outside. So I think there's a lot of power to being able to communicate to your landlord directly and clearly about the climate issue, but also just the financial aspect of this, the savings that they can have. Of course, I don't know, Bob, I don't remember if you mentioned that, but as a renter, I do pay for electricity, so I can always sign up for community solar. And that's a direct savings that I can experience without the fact that I don't have to put solar on my roof or anything. And we can always touch upon that later. But I think another aspect of like learning about all of this, which I think of it more as an educator and as a community member, as an activist, is that even if we can't do certain actions in our own lives, I think we can help other people with that. We can firstly stop the spread of misinformation. We're already seeing now that as the CLCPA, New York's climate legislation, as it starts getting ramped up and we start working on these different projects, misinformation is being spread by the fossil fuel industry. And I think we all have a stake and all have a role in fighting that misinformation. So I think we all need to have more of these conversations, learn about these solutions, and then go talk to more and more people about this.
Yeah.
So true. That's how we're going to win. So I appreciate you mentioning that, Samrat. So another question that people often have is, should I start by getting solar? And what companies, do you recommend? Tom, Bob, do you want to chime in on that one?
Tom, you want to go first?
Yeah. Sure. So I generally don't think starting with solar is the best choice, because most of the other things you can do change your electricity usage. Heat pumps increase your electricity usage by shifting away from fossil fuels, getting an electric car. And the way the regulations on solar work, you're only allowed to put in one that's about sized to your current usage. The one exception, the one time I tell people to do solar to start with, is if they have a new roof, because you really do want to put solar on your roof when it's new. Because if you don't, you have the problem of the solar lasting longer than the roof, and you'd have to take it off to repair the roof. So there's always this window of opportunity with solar, and that's the timing on solar really depends on the age of your roof. Until you get solar, you can always sign up for community solar and get some savings in the meantime until you're ready to do solar on your roof if you have an appropriate roof. Bob?
Yeah, sure. So I absolutely agree with everything you say there. The other thing we focus on is beginning by eliminating energy waste. Whatever it is you're using to heat or cool your home with, you don't want to have that literally go out the roof. So you want to begin by, pulling in the wasted energy in the home. And that, as we think about electrifying homes where solar really matters, then you also want to not oversize things like heat pumps. So by eliminating that energy waste, you can minimize the sizing of the heat pumps and better pair that to the size of the solar equipment, or vice versa, pair the solar equipment to the size of the actual electric load in the home. And that's going to lower your upfront cost and lower your operating costs as well. And so, that allows you to do rooftop or even ground mount solar panels as well. Betty, you also asked about companies that you might recommend. While we certainly don't promote any one single company, in Westchester County, we've run solarized programs, and I know you have elsewhere in the state, and a number of companies have successfully participated in those programs. And so we often grab those lists and let the homeowners know who some of those firms are that have been working in the region and have successfully run in those solarized programs. But we're by no means, as we said earlier, we're by no means beholden to any one company.
But just to chime back in, I forgot to mention, answer the company's question. There's a group purchase program that Sustainable Hudson Valley runs that I usually recommend to clients that will give you discounts on vendors for solar and a lot of these other measures. And they give a discount to the buyer. But we also have lists. It really depends on where you are, who's the best installer for anything. And so we have to sort of wait until we know where you are before we can recommend anything.
And Tom, while you have the floor, can you also answer another frequently asked question, which is, how can I green my investment portfolio for people who have an investment portfolio?
Yeah. So I do want to say, like, a lot of these measures we're talking about have great returns, like putting solar on your roof have better returns than your stock market. So if you're trying to decide whether to invest in a green stock or put solar on your roof, put the solar on your roof. However, you can only invest, for people who have big investment portfolios, the amount of investment in a home, even at the upper end, is only tens of thousands of dollars. And so there's a lot of things in your portfolio after that. For banking, there is a credit union called Clean Energy Credit Union that specializes in financing these things, and you can also use them for your banking and keep your savings there to help promote the industry. For mutual funds, there's a site called fossilfreefunds.org that allows you to analyze, that has measures of how clean various mutual funds are when you have a choice between them. And if you want to use an investment advisor on my website, altenergystocks.com, I have a list of green investment advisors. All these links, can we post those in the chat? I put them in the list in our document. Can someone copy that and put it in the chat for people? Or I could.
Yeah,
but those links are really good. Okay, so yeah, look in the chat for those resources. But you can grow your investment portfolio, and you really don't have to give up anything to do it. You know, sometimes fossil fuel companies perform better than the rest of the stock market, like they have in the last year or so, because fossil fuel prices have been going through the roof. However, for the last decade before that, they've been underperforming, and green companies have, you know, basically, if you just take out fossil fuels, green companies have been outperforming. So there's really no cost to having a green portfolio, and it makes you feel a lot better. It also has a nice advantage that if you are an advocate, like you're on New Yorkers for Clean Power's list of political actions you need to take, when you take those political actions, you're helping your portfolio. If you owned fossil fuel companies, you'd be hurting your portfolio like that. And who wants to do that? I'd rather have a reason to go take those political actions that is telling me to take.
Well, it's not so much me as, you know, the movement, but but we got you, Tom. And very true. So another question is, I've always bought used cars. Are there good deals available for used EVs? And Samrat, do you want to start? And then Tom, you can add to that one.
Sure. So when somebody says, I've always bought used cars, what about used EVs? The first question I ask them is, have you always bought used cars because that's how you like it, or because or you can't afford new cars? Because that's the crucial question. Like, if somebody, the way I look at it is, again, in terms of privilege, like most of the people in the world don't drive cars. And there are those of us who do drive cars, and then there are those of us who can afford new cars. So my question always is, if you have the money, if you can afford a new car, then I usually ask people to go for a new electric car, because it's adding another electric car into the ecosystem. And that's my first line of attack, so to say. Tom, do you want to talk about used cars in general?
Yeah, no, so I'm actually a person who has bought a used EV. So, and I actually helped my stepson do the same. I have a 2012 used RAV4 EV. And when I bought it, it was a great deal. I think it's right now, it's kind of hard to say there's a great deal on any used car. So minus the current environment, typically used EVs have actually been better deals than used gas cars for a couple reasons. Used gas cars have more maintenance issues than an EV, assuming the battery is okay. The first generation Leafs are really bad for the battery, but most of the other ones have good thermal management on the battery. So if you test the battery when you buy it, you're probably in pretty good shape for buying an EV, and it's probably a better deal. The problem with used EVs is that they're older models. They don't have much range typically. And that will change as we go forward. But that's part of the reason you get such a great deal. But hey, if you're going to buy a second car, which you don't need a lot of range for, the used EV is a good option. Or like your son's going off to college and you want to get him a car and you don't want him to go too far to get in trouble. Hey, there might be a benefit there. So if you're going to buy a used car, it's worth considering. It's sort of for people who want the lower range ones, and you can get a great deal to have for a second car. Or if you just don't drive much and you don't need the range, you'll be in good shape with that.
Right. And if Tom, if I may add to that, I think most people sort of overestimate how much driving the capability they need, and really looking at a used EV as a second car in the family, if that's your situation, it's really perfect. It really works out, and most people really enjoy it. And then they start doing most of their stuff with that car, except sort of the longer trips. So it's really worthwhile thinking about as a lower cost option, an older car, if you can get your hands on one, especially in the current climate, and start there, and then think about a newer all electric that takes care of everything else.
Yeah, another reason to buy a used car is don't qualify for the various tax rebates. If you don't pay taxes, you can't use the tax rebates like $750. But whoever bought it first gets to use the tax basis rebate, and then they're selling it to you after that. So it's a way for you to benefit from the tax rebate if you don't have the tax appetite for that.
That's right.
Okay, thank you for that. Another sort of related affordability question. If money's tight, can I afford to get off fossil fuels? And I'll pass that off to Bob to start.
Sure, thanks, Betta. Yeah, in this period of really rapidly escalating fossil fuel costs, it's especially important to recognize the high cost of business as usual. That means, doing nothing actually costs you more. When I started working in this program, we were looking at, for example, price of oil at somewhere around $2.75 a gallon, and now people are reporting prices well north of $6 a gallon. So by doing nothing, things really do cost a lot more, and so when you start to look at the energy savings that you can get by getting off of fossil fuels, and looking at what we call in the industry beneficial electrification, getting into clean, high efficiency heat pumps to heat and cool your home, then you're really starting to see a value proposition to the homeowner that makes a lot of sense. And policies are in place today that provide rebates and tax credits, and there's plenty of affordable financing that makes this an especially good time to be investing in your home. Samrat, I think you had some thoughts on that too.
Sure.
You had done some things on, you pointed to the heat pump overhead. So I'm wondering what your thoughts are.
I think again, it's the kind of situation where I think people sort of make a miscalculation, because I think they look at the big ticket items first. Like I usually talk to people about getting off fossil fuels, and they say, I can't afford a $45,000 EV, but that's not the place to start, right? You start with a $2,000 heat pump hot water heater, and Central Hudson gives you a rebate for that. And again, I think it's sort of it's really looking at what piece you can do first, and every single piece will save you money. And I think another mistake people make in kind of doing this comparison is they don't, they should really look at replacing a fossil fuel based machine at the end of its life, and then say, okay, if I had to buy a new one, and instead of doing that, now I buy a fossil fuel free alternative, what's that difference, and how quickly can I recoup that cost? If they do the calculation that way, then it's very clear that in most cases, of course, depending on what we're talking about, 3, 4, 5, 6 years, and then essentially that thing's free. So I think that's why we offer the coaching, because these scenarios, I think people really need to sit down and talk with people like us and their community members and discuss things on a very personal basis. What is their situation, and then what makes most sense? And for most people, I think for all people, it makes sense to start getting off fossil fuels as soon as they can.
Yeah, absolutely agree.
Yeah.
Amen. And a big part of this is the planning, right? That's something that you guys can help people with, even if they're not ready to make a purchase, but they're starting to think about it. You can help them. So, if their furnace does break, or they know that they're going to need to get a new stove sometime soon, they can start to plan and make the right decisions about where to choose those appliances, how to start incorporating more all electric appliances into their homes. And if they do, if people are starting to electrify, another frequently asked question is, do I need to consider anything about how my house is set up? For instance, if you only have a 100 amp electrical service, will I need to upgrade it? What about an EV charger? So as we take these steps to electrify our lives, what else do we need to worry about? Tom, do you want to start? And Bob and Samrat, feel free to chime in.
With an EV charger, it depends on the EV. If you don't drive much, you may be able to get away with only a standard outlet somewhere near your EV, or if you have if you get a plug-in hybrid. For most people, a typical EV, you need 240 volts and with 20 to 40 amps or even 50 amps of power. And if you only have a 100 amp service, that can really dig into how much you have at any one time. But speaking from personally, you can get by with 100 amps. My house has 100 amps and it is now completely electric. But I have to do things like not charge my car. I can't charge my car at like a really fast rate. I can charge it sort of moderate, which is plenty for me. But I can't, in the winter when all my heat pumps are running hard, I can't charge my car and also run the electric dryer. If I don't do all those three things at once, I'm fine. So if you looked at the sum of all the things I have plugged into my house, I mean, you add the requirements of all the heat pumps, it's probably 500 amps. But in actuality, as long as I'm careful not to do those three things at once, don't charge the car and run the dryer in the winter, it's not a problem. In the summer, I can charge the car and run the dryer. But in the winter, I can't because the heat pumps are taking a lot. But if you're early in the planning stage, it wouldn't hurt to upgrade. It'll raise the value of your house, and it does make installing a lot of these things easier. I did have to add a sub panel, and that's sort of, especially if you're you're having an electrician anywhere, it's probably worth it. And if you like gadgets, there's a new type of smart panel from a company called span.io that also can monitor your whole house and works better for integrating battery storage and solar and so forth. So the geeks among you who need to upgrade your panels are sort of have a cool opportunity there too. So you don't have to, but there are a lot of reasons to do it. And I would say if you don't want to watch everything and don't want to worry about it, yeah, just upgrade to 200 amps if you don't have it already.
Yeah, I'd agree, Tom. That does make a lot of sense. But for people who already have air conditioning in their homes, most likely you probably already do have enough power, to be able to swap out to heat pumps, for example. You're actually running a more efficient piece of cooling equipment with a heat pump than your older air conditioning equipment. So it doesn't work quite as hard, and it pulls a little less draw on your power. And I'll also mention that if you that I actually, to your point about the load center, Tom, in my own home, I put a geo system in my home some 24 years ago now, and about 4.5 years ago, I actually upgraded the piece of equipment. And when I did that, I had an electrician come in to do the work, of course, and at his recommendation, we did add a load center. It sort of cleared some space on the primary panel, and even though I didn't need to upgrade, from the system that I already had at 200 amps, it makes space on that panel that much easier. The imperative thing here to take away is have a licensed electrician evaluate the capacity and then work there. go forward from there.
Good advice. People want to ask other questions, they can raise their hand or put in the chat. One more, how can renters work with their landlords? That is an excellent question. I think some people might feel intimidated, especially if they're someone who has like a decent rent and they don't want to be a pain. I know I felt like that many years as a renter, not wanting to be a nudge. How can we like incentivize our landlords to want to work with us?
I think Bennett, I think the key thing there is, of course, firstly, we have to know our landlords, like who our landlord is. But given the fact that all of these solutions inevitably lead to financial savings, that's the angle to approach this from, right? So say in my apartment, we had a gas stove, right? So now this gas stove's there. I didn't want to use it because it's gas, right? That was my angle. How do I get my landlord to stop me from help me out with this? In this case, all I did was I stopped using the stove. I bought portable induction cooktops and I started using them, right? And I pay for the electricity, so he can't say anything against it. And he saw me do this, and now he's not paying for my gas anymore. And he was encouraged by this. So he said, let's just take out the stove. We took out the stove and he built me this nice little table for my induction cooktops with shelves and everything. He built it himself for that, right? For that purpose. So here's an example of somebody who clearly sees the advantage once it's happened. So maybe starting with little things like that, like seeing what's possible, or again, talking to them about, he had this propane water heating system with the hot water and everything, and he pays for my hot water. Well, I just showed him savings he would have from getting a heat pump hot water heater, connected him with an installer. We got that put in, and now he's very happy because again, he's saving money and I'm doing the legwork. So maybe that's also an approach with landlords. If the renter can do a little bit of the running around, do a little bit of the calculation, find the contractors, maybe the landlord would be more amenable to making those changes.
If I can add on, Samrat, that, when you have a situation, if somebody has, say, oil or propane heat and they want to encourage the landlord to switch over to a heat pump, well, there's kind of a split incentive there, right? The landlord might have been paying for the oil or propane, and now the tenant's going to pick up the cost on the electric bill because the meter is being charged directly. So, you might be willing to get into a negotiation. Obviously, as Samrat says, you need to know your landlord, but there's an opportunity to maybe negotiate a little bit on the rent, agree to a longer term, or maybe even a slight bump in the rent that accounts for the energy cost savings so that everybody comes out ahead. You have to do your homework on this, but I think there's there's good value in that. And the landlord, their property is improved, just as Samrat's shown on his own. So there's good reason. They just need to have their eyes opened and understand your willingness to move forward on that.
Yeah, one place, I think it's, if you live in a building with more than 8 units, there's some really good incentives out there for installing EV chargers. So that's one place to call the coaches and find out about those incentives so you can share them with your landlords. They could probably practice install them for free. And then one other thing a renter can do is, I think this is very important, when you're shifting rentals, when you're going into a new rental, always ask the landlord what energy efficiency improvements they've done. Try to get old bills for them. Make them feel the pain. If you're paying the bill, that's the one time you have leverage over what you're paying. So ask, always get those old bills that the last tenant paid, find out about energy. And if enough people ask them about the energy, they'll realize, wait, if this is right, people care about this and I can make improvements that'll improve the rent I can charge. So that's one time when you really have a lot of opportunity to influence them. Even if you don't take that rental, you can influence 5 landlords if you asked them all, when you're looking for rentals.
Right. And Betta knows this very well, that there are lots of programs that New York State offers for affordable multifamily housing. Incentives that come from NYSERDA and the utility companies that are really targeted at affordable housing, so that the landlords have a good reason to move forward. It makes a lot of economic sense for them to do these upgrades building wide.
Absolutely. And I'm so glad that we mentioned that, and the importance of energy efficiency, and even something as simple, and, it seems like a cliche to change your light bulb, but there's a lot of people who still, don't have LEDs, and, making that switch can make a big difference with your energy bill and your carbon footprint, or that of your building. So going back a little bit, this is a very good question. I appreciate that it was raised, because sometimes we are just like assuming everybody knows what a heat pump is, and a lot of people still don't know what a heat pump is. So I think, just that basic level of education, is one of the things that we're trying to do with this program, and just in general. So can somebody, I don't know who wants to start. Tom, do you want to just kind of give the basics of like, what is a heat pump and why is it, better?
Can I just give a science teacher thing? Sorry, Tom. Can I do a little science teacher thing? And then you can add all the details there, right? So like I tell my students, a heat pump is essentially what you have in your refrigerator. Your refrigerator is a heat pump. A heat pump is simply a device that's moving energy from one space to the other. Now in the refrigerator, you're moving the energy from inside the refrigerator to the outside. When you put that same device essentially in your wall, what it's doing is it can move that energy from the inside to the outside, which means it cools the place, or the other way around, it moves the energy from the outside to the inside, which means you're heating your space. So that's what a heat pump is. And 2 different kinds. You have air source, which is transferring energy through the outside air, and the other is ground source, which we call geothermal. All right, Tom, Bob,
can you show yours again, Samrat, since you have a nice like demo right there?
Right. So it looks like an air conditioning unit. These are like mini splits. So this looks like an air conditioning unit on the inside. This can do heating, cooling, dehumidifying, all of that. And it's called a ductless system. So there's no ducting required, just a pipe that goes through the wall right there to the condenser that's outside that does the work.
So sometimes I explain to people, in addition to what Samrat just mentioned about the refrigerator, how does a heat pump both heat and cool? How does it know? And I give the example that if you had a window air conditioner and you put that on in the summertime, you feel nice cold air on the inside, and you stand outside, you'll feel warm air, hot air blowing out. Well, what if you just took that and turned it around in the winter and let the hot air blow in and the cold air blow out? I mean, that's essentially the same thing. The difference is that the heat pump has what's called a reversing valve in there. So you don't have to physically take the unit out of the window and turn it around. The heat pump reverses the refrigeration cycle so that it's sending cool to the inside of the house in the summertime and warmth to the inside of the house in the wintertime.
That was great explanation, guys. I don't know, Tom, if you want to add anything about heat pump, hot water heaters, or the efficiency factor.
Right.
I think those would be 2 other things to touch on.
I don't think we need to go any nerdier than we already have on that.
Okay.
However, there are a couple other questions that are related that we can get to that maybe I could touch on. So a couple people asked, so the mini splits that Samrat has, that answers the Susan's question about how to shift to heat pumps from radiators. They don't use ducts. There's one in basically every room. You don't have ducting system. You basically automatically have a zoned heating and cooling system. the detail. Mariah asked, when should I switch? Should I wait until my propane boiler breaks? Actually, the time you should switch is when your air conditioner is going to break. That's the best, because they replace the air conditioner and they can also heat. So if you get them in before the boiler breaks, and they replace, if you don't have air conditioning, so you put them in when you want air conditioning or your air conditioner breaks, as long as it's before the boiler breaks. But yeah, because they're really an air conditioning unit more than a boiler. They just happen to have an extra feature that they could be called cool pumps.
So if I'm going to geek out a little bit and do the nerd thing for a sec, one of the things about old air conditioners is that they're using refrigerants that are actually no longer allowed or even available. If you have an air conditioning unit that's probably more than 15 years old or so, it probably has something called R22 as a refrigerant, and that has very high ozone depletion potential and very high global warming potential compared to refrigerants that are now being used these days. So if your air conditioning is starting to fail, you're not going to actually be able to get the refrigerant to fix any leaks in there. So that is absolutely right, Tom. That's the time to do it.
Another heat pump related question from Ruth. And Ruth, by the way, I saw you with the divestment question too, and wasn't deliberately ignoring, but I think for this one, we are trying to stay focused on more kind of our personal actions, not political ones, although maybe we should plan to do a future online teach-in on the bigger kind of divestment movement, because it is super important. But to drill down into your question about, could heat pumps work in a townhouse complex? I'm thinking of how the cool air gets to far away houses, or must it be close to the building? Who wants to take that one?
If you can install an air conditioner in a townhouse, you can install a heat pump in a townhouse. I think so, yes.
Absolutely. Lots of townhouses do have central air distribution. Some have, forced air, some have baseboard heat. But those that have forced air, there are air source heat pumps that will work through a centrally ducted system. What Samrat has above him is a what's called a mini split, but there are also those that work with centrally ducted forced air systems, and most geothermal systems also work with centrally ducted. But there you need to look at the entire complex. But a single townhouse, absolutely, if it has forced air, you can work with a centrally ducted air source heat pump.
Thanks, Bob. So we have one about heat pump water heaters that Susan's plumber said they don't work for more than 1 or 2 people because it's too slow to reheat water after the tank is depleted. I would love to know the answer to that. The heat pump hot water heater is next on our list, and my partner likes to take very long hot showers, so I want to make sure that they'll work. Can anybody chime in on that, Tom? I think this is one you've been encouraging me about for a while.
Yeah. Well, I've encouraged everyone on this just because Central Hudson has such big rebates that they're pretty cost effective. For your partner, I think what you really need to do is get one that has a really large tank. So yes, they do heat slowly if you want to use the heat pump feature. The ones that are hybrid heat pumps have a backup pure electric heat, which you'd rather not use because it uses a lot. So if you have a big, just like with a normal tank water heater, the bigger your family is, the more long showers your partner wants to take. You need a bigger tank. If you have a really high hot water usage, you can consider solar hot water. But the numbers really only work really well for solar hot water with very high usage. So you have a family of 5, you expect the kids to stay home for another 10 years. solar hot water starts making financial sense. For smaller families, you're better off with a heat pump water heater fueled by photovoltaics. Anyone else want to hop in on that?
And again, Tom, I think like what you said about just size it appropriately, that makes most sense. If you use more water, get a bigger tank. I just, in recommending this to a lot of people and people who've switched, and my own landlord, we have 4 adults here, like 2 in our family and 2 in theirs. I just have never heard somebody saying that like, oh, I'm just so unhappy because we run out of hot water with our hybrid heat pump hot water heater. That's one complaint I've never gotten. So I think that's probably, I don't know, I would have to mistrust the plumber there a little bit. Maybe he has an incentive to sell a certain kind of hot water heater there.
Or maybe he just doesn't have experience with,
right.
That's, I think, an issue that we often face too, right?
That's true. That's true. Like once for my landlord to get the heat pumps installed, I got one of the contractors. I wanted to get him to speak to a few. So I got the ones that I recommended, but then we got another one. And he came in and he's talking about a heat pump hot water heater. And he gives all the reasons and then convinces my landlord to get a propane hot water heater. I'm like, no, that was not why you were supposed to be here. That I had to restart the whole conversation. It's just because he liked doing those. That's what he wanted to sell.
Let me offer just a somewhat tangentially related thought on this. With hot water, there are 2 things that you can do. One is make sure all your hot water pipes are well insulated. You'd be surprised how many you go into basements and there's no insulation on those water lines. Just like you want to insulate your home, insulate the hot water lines and make sure that you're not losing water, because you're wasting energy and you're going to diminish the amount of usable hot water that you're going to feel coming out of the tank. The other thing we found is this really cool widget that I want to share with everybody. And you can actually buy this on, I believe, almost any of the utility companies' websites. It's a thermostatic shower valve, and it was developed in the Southwest by an organization called Evolve Technologies that's, did this to help fight drought conditions. But NYSERDA figured out this actually saves a lot of hot water energy. So it basically works like this. You step in the shower, you turn on the shower and you wait for the hot water to show up. And it, you go do a few other things and you come back a little while later, a few minutes later, and the water's been running hot. And now instead of a 40-gallon supply of hot water, you're down to about 35 gallons and you've wasted the energy and the water. What this device does is it has a little thermostat in there right in the shower head that when the temperature of the water reaches 95 degrees, it shuts the flow off and you step into the shower and you have hot water ready and waiting. You pull a tab on the shower head and the valve opens up and you haven't wasted energy and you haven't wasted the water. So that's another way to maximize the capacity of your hot water heater.
Very cool. And we have Paul chiming in here. My hybrid heat pump water heater cost $1,600. Central Hudson gave a rebate of $1,000 and the federal tax credit was $300. So it cost $300 and it uses 500 kilowatts per year, 1.2 solar panels. It's the first move I would do. All right. Thank you for that testimonial, Paul. We may need to do a clean power story about you. That's another thing that NYCP likes to do, is feature different, stories of people who've successfully incorporated clean energy solutions into their lives and want to share the good news and help to encourage others. And let's see, did I skip any questions? I know we're coming up on the hour. Susan, hopefully you got all of your questions answered. I see one with from Joe. Bob, what's the full name of that thermostatic device? What's that?
I'm going to put that in the chat. It's made by Evolve Technologies and it's called a TSV, or thermostatic valve shower head. And if you like your rain shower, you can get just the valve that goes in front of the rain shower head.
Okay, a lot of these links, in a follow-up email with the recording. We'll also share how people can sign up by either going to NYCP's site or Bedford 2030. And of course, Sustainable Hudson Valley has tons of amazing resources as well, our other partner in this. And I see Anshul is talking about, the fossil fuel industry stepping up their misinformation campaign and sadly working with the New York State Plumbing, Heating, Cooling Contractors Association. So thank you for sharing that, Anshul. And you're also giving me the opportunity. I said I wasn't going to be political, but I can't help myself. Please check out renewableheatnow.org if you're interested in getting involved with how to really push back on some of this misinformation and help make sure that heat pumps are accessible and affordable and everywhere. So yes, got to do that little plug. And let's see, question from Jerry in the Southern Tier. What is the geographic radius for coaching? Bob is in Bedford, but willing to go beyond Bedford in the kind of greater Westchester area, I think is fair to say. And Tom and Samrat are statewide, right, guys?
Yeah, and I mean, I think that tricky thing sometimes can be connecting people with contractors. If somebody calls from Buffalo, I may not know the contractors there, but there are a lot of issues that I think people can talk through. Like if you're thinking about buying an electric car or just generally thinking about switching over, there's a lot of number crunching that we can do with people no matter where they're from.
Yeah, I mean, I recently coached someone in Maine and someone in California. Maybe I shouldn't tell Betta that because it is New Yorkers for Clean Power, but basically anyone who gets to the link, I'll coach them.
I love it. We can cross state lines, right? Right. It's one planet, Joe. Here. So yeah, we want to help wherever you are. If you're interested in making some changes in your life, in your home, in your community, please reach out to us, set up an appointment with one of our wonderful clean energy coaches. You guys are the best and so knowledgeable and patient and supportive as we all, do what we can to reduce our greenhouse gas emissions and make the switch to clean energy. So thanks so much. It's 8 o'clock, so I don't want to keep anybody, but if there are any last words or burning questions, please, chime in before we sign off. Guys, anything else that you want to mention?
Well, I just want to thank everybody here for participating, and I learned so much from Tom and Samrat and Betta from you always. So it's been a treat. Thank you.
Likewise, Bob. Thank you, everyone.
Yeah, and I thank everybody, but I also do want to agree with Ruth that it's all about politics. If you want to save money, upgrading to electrification on your house is the way to go. If you want to save the planet, the leverage in politics is a lot higher. Ideally, you'll do both, but we can't save the planet by just dealing with our own emissions. We have to deal with the world's emissions, and being active politically is the most leverage we have.
Absolutely. Couldn't have said it better myself. Thank you so much, Tom, for that, and for everybody. So much work to do at home and politically in the streets, fighting for a better future. And I know we're going to get there, and appreciate everybody being a part of this movement, and hope to see you all very soon. And thanks again to Melissa and Amelia for holding it down on the back end with the tech and the links and the follow-up. We got this, and don't hesitate to reach out, everybody. So thank you. Have a great night.
Thanks.